Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Vodkast Does Dungeons and Dragons. I'm your host as always, DMJ. Today we're going to tackle Murkmire Swamp a little bit further. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a backstory of Murkmire Swamp. We're going to build out some of these buildings a little more. We're going to fix up some of the rooms a little bit more. And then we'll probably wrap it up in an episode 3. But I'm really enjoying that you guys are enjoying these episodes that I'm doing with Dungeon Alchemist and Dungeons and Dragons. And if you're loving the content that I'm creating as much as I love creating the content that you guys are watching, would you please consider subscribing to the channel? I'm on the road to 1,000 and I'd really love to get there before the end of the year, and I can't do that without your support. So without further ado, let's get into this. I know the last time we were working on lights, I was showing you guys how it's kind of fun to put little lights underneath the water. It gives it kind of an eerie feel. We were putting a bunch of buildings in here. This seems like it's way more done than when we left it. Yeah, because this is my finished Murkmire Swamp. You know what? Let's go over this, and I'll show you some of the details here that I did. In the last video, what we done did is we were working on this tavern over here, the Murkmire Tavern. And so, if you guys do not know, Murkmire is a location within a swamp, a little bit, probably about 2 or 3 days walk from the capital of Athalia in my world. And this place is welcoming. Anyone who can make it to Murkmire is safe and protected there. And the story behind that goes a little something like this. There was a group of knights sent out by Bellet Redwood to quell a uprising in the swamp. It was misled and misinterpreted, but these knights went out there to basically wipe out the entire village of Murkmire, all the goblins, all the ogres, all the trolls, anyone that didn't seem to fit into the norms of society. And when they got out there, they discovered that all the soldiers were gone from the village, and all that was left was the elderly and the young children. And of course, being knights, they couldn't bring themselves to slaughter them, and it kind of opened the eyes on them. And what they learned there that day was that there was actually an invasion coming in from the barbarians in the north, and the trolls and orcs and goblins had all banded together to go fight them. So the knights ended up joining their cause, helping them out, and that's the day that the treaty was formed. And from that day forth, anyone on the face of Athalia who finds himself in Murkmire is safe and protected as long as they're not causing any damage to anybody else. So this is the actual tavern. We're going to pull in real close here. I know you'll never see this if you're on Roll20 or Foundry, but I wanted to show that there was like a really broken down kind of look to, that is a giant table. That is going to have to be resized. Nope, the whole thing. There are some little issues going on, especially with things that are being built by people outside of Dungeon Alchemist. I'm not sure the name of the company. I do apologize because I really do love this software. And the people that are doing those may be building them on a larger scale or a smaller scale, but thankfully they allowed us to make things, most things, at least as big or as small as we wanted. So let's go in the front door. So here is the front door. Let's open it up. We can roll in here. There are plenty of tables for anybody who needs to come in and get a meal. We got a fireplace to warm you by. There is, whoa, what is that? Some kind of instruments, some kind of spinning instruments in here. Entertainment galore. Of course, the music may not be the best. You're not going to find yourself in Ashtar and Alethir. You're in Murkmire. The musicians and the elves, they're much further south from here. But yeah, just a small bar, a little piano. And moving on from the main room, we've got a little guest quarters here with a little fire, a little wood stove and some beds. There is a doorway out to a deck that wraps around most of the building here. Before I had originally built this, I built this on platforms rather than rooms, and that's why it's got this kind of weird, kind of unique look, because all of these are little independent pieces. They're not actually a fence that have been slapped on there. And you can achieve that effect by going into like walls and adding walls. You can select walls, and as long as there's a room down, you can basically put a wall wherever you want. Whereas this case, I put these platforms and I placed these walls. How do you do that? If you go into the Place Objects tab and search wall, a bunch of walls will pop up, and you can select the wall. And that's how you can kind of just put a wall wherever you really want to put a wall. Maybe there's ruins or whatever. Here you go. It's some ruins. What is it? There you go. Lovely, beautiful, wonderful, fantastic. And another cool feature about Murkmire is all these little interconnected islands, these little archipelagos with little houses on them. They're all connected by these little wooden bridges that are rickety. They all pass over these waters that have these kind of lights, like I said, kind of just glowing underneath the surface of the water. And if you're in Roll20 or Foundry, you're of course going to see something that looks a little bit more like this. As you can see, obviously there's a lot more going on in Murkmire Swamp than just a tavern. All these other buildings serve a purpose. Some of them are residential. This one over here, let me see if I can find it. Yes, this one is actually a mansion, an abandoned mansion that's been left unattended to for a while. I've got the candles on in there for a gaming reason, but other than that, this is kind of an abandoned mansion. You can see kind of the ruins in the swamp here. They're scattered here and there if you look about the map, but it's all these little details that you can add with Dungeon Alchemist if you spend the time with it, which you also don't have to. You can have a map done in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes if you really want to. But I really enjoy paying attention to detail and all little things that my players, if they're going through this jungle, perhaps they want to take each step at a time. They're not just going to jump right into the tavern. They want to explore Murkmire Swamp. And this kind of gives them some options, some buildings, some shops, some homes, some residential stuff going on in here. And there's always a story to be told here in Murkmire Swamp. And now that you guys have a glimpse of what's to come, we're going to go back to the one that we were working on together several weeks ago at this point. And we're going to take a look. I like the way that this one's coming out a little bit better. There's a little bit of stuttering whenever I load a new map, which isn't a big deal. It clears up really quickly, but I don't know if anybody from Dungeon Alchemist is actually watching this, but that might be something you want to look into. Not a big deal, like I said. Okay, so we started setting up a much smaller tavern than the original Murkmire. I kind of dig it. Gives us a little bit more room on the map. We added a dock here, and I believe, no, there's no canoe. What would be a dock without a canoe? I was such a fool to do this. I was such a fool to not put a canoe in the water, the swampy water. And just like that, we got our canoe. What color do we want our canoe? Oh, let's make it a little bit more swampy looking. It's a little more camouflaged that way. Yeah, you can't see it when it's creeping down the old river here, or swamp, or whatever you want to call it. The last time, I believe one of the last few things we did is we added this bedroom. I think it's actually pretty good. If you've got a large traveling party, you're able to house 8 people here, store some of their goods. I don't know if I would change much about that. I'm going to move this tree back a little bit just so it's not right in the room. I like that there's a thing in here, a window. Let's change this to day for the time being just so I can get a better look at it. This isn't a bad guest room for the Murkmire Tavern, but if you're not thrilled with it, you can always come over to the room tool here and then go to the last tab, which is edit room. Select the room you want to edit, and you can refresh all the items in that room. It'll move them about. I know I might be repetitive, but there might be some of you who are watching this who have never seen some of the earlier videos, and that you can just keep going with that till you find exactly what you need. We're just going to stick with that for now. That seems like a pretty good guest room. I want to expand this a little bit more so I can bring this deck out just a little bit, few more squares. That's also going to extend all the area around it. So this is going to add 2 lines to the map, and it'll put, foliage around it or whatever you want to have there. I'm going to say this deck comes out over nothing. It's a floating deck. We're going to lower a lot of this so that it's under the water. We're going to extend this down. We're going to make this a floating deck that kind of wraps around a little bit. I don't want to lose that rock if I don't have to, though. Well, in the process, I lost the rock, but all you got to do is go back in and put it back in. There you go. Now you got a rock. All right, see, now I'm torn a little bit when I look at this overhead. This is neat. It's a cool little area. I mean, we can get rid of the trees, but I kind of want to make this all water. I want to make this really murky. This whole area is it's a swamp. So let's lower the terrain a little bit here and see if we can get the results we're looking for. There we go. That's what I was hoping would happen. It connected with the other water source and it filled it on its own. And I do like having this little edge over here where you can kind of come in and do some fishing if that's what you're into. There's a lot of fish to be caught in the swamp. I don't like the fact that this ends here. So if I need to extend a map a little bit more, I'll just create a room, a temporary room, however larger I want it to be, check them off. And that will add to the map's dimensions. It's the only way you can get a workaround because you can go in and you can change from any kind of terrain that you want or any little environment tweaks that you want, but you can't extend the map, unfortunately. So what we're going to do now is just go ahead and delete those rooms. We'll delete that one. The other one did not get made for some reason. So let me throw that in and I'll be right back. All right, we are back. We're deleting that room. And we're going to have to fix the ground a little bit because it left a little nook here. I don't know why it did that. You would think it would just take care of it on its own, but it did not. We are going to have to go back in with the edit terrain tool and just kind of smooth out that edge. Not that the players are ever going to see something like that. This is such a minute detail, but this is my video, and if I want to show you the minute details and the things that I do, then that's what I'm going to do, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Now that we've got our wraparound deck, we're going to put another bedroom on this end of things here so that if there's a lot of guests coming through town, there's plenty of place for people to stay. We're going to go with tavern. We'll go with a bedroom again. I feel like we could do some smaller bedrooms here. Maybe a 3x3. Maybe we'll do a few 3x3s with a hallway in the middle. And just like that, we've added a little hallway and 4 bedrooms. It's extending the size of this inn and tavern. I do wish the great room was a little bit bigger, and I may extend that later on in another video. But for now, I think the tavern's looking pretty good. We're going to switch it back to night and make sure all the lighting looks good, because when the party comes across this in my game, it will most likely be night. We're going to need a little bit more light sources. We'll do some wall-mounted torches. Like I said, this is a very kind of, I don't want to say uncivilized, but... and if there are people out on the deck, you got to have some light out here for them, you know? Now let's take a quick look at that overhead. I like that already. A little bit more light. We'll leave it darker out here. What else exists in this little swamp here? Obviously, if you're out in a swamp, you're going to need a lot of things. So let's take a look at some of our options here in Dungeon Alchemist and see what we could do. The ruins are nice for the appearance, but they don't really work in the case where you need like a tavern or something like that, or not a tavern in this case, but like a shop of some sort. So we'll go to the village. We'll take a look at the shops they have. A butcher shop is definitely something that you'd find in this town. They're slaughtering, wild boar left and right, serving it up at the tavern. So in the near future, I believe they are adding diagonal walls, which will be a thrill for me because I kind of want to offset my building so that, you can have streets and you can also kind of turn streets and you can have curved walls and curved buildings. I think that'll be great when they finally add that. I'm just going to go ahead and mock something up here. I like doing kind of random blocks that overlap. If you're just sticking to a square or a rectangle and you end up looking back and you zoom out and you're looking at your map and everything just looks weird. I'm going to show you a map in a little while that I did for a future game. Unfortunately, my players, I'm going to have to ask them to not watch this video until we play that game. However, now we've got our butcher shop. Dark in here, we're definitely going to need to add some more lights. Perhaps they've got some wall-mounted lanterns in here because I don't want to start a fire. Nothing super fancy. I'm not saying that these folks are super fancy here in Murkmire. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a fancy group of folks, but they do need light. I'm going to have to add a chandelier, I think. I don't really enjoy adding chandeliers. There's not a lot of chandeliers that add this kind of light to the room. This chandelier in particular, I wish all of these shed that light. Look at it. I get no light from this on the floor. Why do you have a chandelier if it's not really shedding any light on the floor? And the case with these two, and I know I'm getting on a little rant here, but no matter how I brighten them, there's still this weird darkness underneath it. And I get it that that's the type of light it's going to be, but there's not enough of the lights that actually project light directly down. And I find myself having to use this a lot, which is a bummer because I don't want it in this setting. It doesn't seem like it would really fit in this setting, although it is green, so we're just going to go with it. And that's going to allow the butcher to see a little bit better. We're going to turn the light up here. And there we go. There's our butcher shop. Let's take a closer look at our butcher shop. All right. So here's the front entrance. No? Is this the front entrance? Let's move the front entrance over here. That's the one thing I wish you could kind of dedicate on the map somewhere, a specific location that is center, and everything would face that way if you're doing doors. Or you could even do it per room, because a lot of times I end up having to take the time to move a window where a door is, a door where a window is. It isn't a big deal. It takes 2 seconds. However, I just wish there was some way that I could just tell it to do that on its own. I have to say, this is a pretty good butcher shop. I'm not going to tweak much of it. I am going to change the floor and the walls, though. Like I said, this is Murkmire Swamp. It's not the cleanest of places. It's not, everything is on stilts. Everything is a little damp. I want kind of a ruined but not too ruined floor. So let's go somewhere in the middle with the ruined hardwood, which I believe would make more sense here in Murkmire Swamp. And the walls, something that players are never going to see, but I need to fix because it'll drive me crazy if I don't. Okay, let's see if there's anything ruinable here that's not too bad. Yeah, I like that. I think if you're in a swamp, you're not going to see a lot of handy work and a lot of craftsmanship. You're not going to have dwarves coming in and doing stonework and making beautiful buildings. So you're going to see something that's a little worn, a little beat down. And I think that really kind of conveys this. The nice warmth of this shop, too, is interesting because it separates you from the swamp, which it kind of feels like everything out there is wet and damp. In here, you can come in and at least, if you're going to be warm and damp, you're going to be covered in blood in here and sweat.
Blood and sweat.
Sometimes happy little accidents happen when you're doing these things. So this is just a pot, and I missed the floor here, so I'm going to fill this in. But the happy accidents that I'm kind of talking about are the ideas that it gives you. So I don't really see a stove in here, but let's go back over to Murkmire Tavern. And where is our kitchen? Do we not have a kitchen yet? Well, we're going to make a kitchen next. Before we do a butcher shop, we're going to do a small kitchen. We're going to have it come right off of the bar, although I don't want to lose the swamp. I really like that swamp area. What could we do? Where could we put our kitchen? We could replace this little room with a kitchen, and I think that's what we're going to do. We've got 4 rooms over here. If the Murkmire Tavern is so busy that they need more than 4 rooms, I can figure it out on their own. I'm a little sick of those trolls, to be completely honest. All right, so let's go into the rooms. Let's go back to tavern. We're going to go to kitchen, and let's set this sucker up. Okay, I went ahead and I've refreshed this a few times, and I do like this a little bit better. I think what I want to do, though, is I want to move this a little bit tighter in here. Maybe make it a little bit smaller and offset it. Maybe even turn it. That way, if the chef needs access to the stove and the fireplace, he's good to go. He's got a little wood stove over here he can cook stuff on. Let's go ahead and change the floor again. I kind of want to go with the same, but I think I'm going to go with a stone floor in this one. Maybe this is a little even more murkier than you would like to find in a kitchen. But it is Murkmire, so it's not too bad. So you got a little bit of moss growing up through the kitchen. Not a big deal. I wasn't really dug in on the location of the table, so I moved it. That cauldron is huge. Let's shrink that down a little bit. And these are the tiny little details that you can go in and tweak. You can change the color of the fireplace up top here if that's what you're into. You can take the leeks here off of this table and replace them with cabbage if you wanted to. There's some bread over here. I don't know if you'd necessarily find a lot of well-cooked bread at Murkmire Tavern, but maybe somebody came through town and they had a few extra loaves and sold it to the people at Murkmire Tavern. I don't know. You're the dungeon master, not me. But feel free to take this idea and run with anything I come up with here. I always say if you want to go back and check out this video, I'm going to wrap this up too because I know this is going on for a while. I have a hard time making these short, and I have a really hard time focusing on one detail of a map when I start looking at one thing and it gives me an idea for another. And that's not a bad thing. Being creative is a curse and a blessing, I've always said. When I need to create, it's like a passion or a pain that I have to do it. If I don't do it, I feel like it just builds up inside. So I don't mind taking the time to do these things. So I hope you guys are really enjoying them. What the hell was I just talking about? Well, my train of thought is completely gone. If I remember, I'll film it during editing and stick it in between here and there. But this is kind of what I was talking about with placing the walls. I don't want to show too much of this map or locations within this map, but using those walls, you can kind of make your own little mazes and little things like this. You can reshape rooms a little bit more if you want to put dividers in rooms as a way to do it using kind of this. And I just want to show you the detail of using that and to your advantage. There you go. And if you get a chance and you guys want to check out this video, this is my top 5 tips for being a new dungeon master. It kind of throws a lot of the rules out the window. And like I was saying before with the whole, which rule was it? Hang on. No, here we go. That's right. Rule number 1 is be original, but also steal. If you want to check out that video, it's my top 5 DM tips for new DMs. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's a lot different than what a lot of people are saying. It's a lot less rules focused and a little bit more on the creative aspect of it. So if you guys are loving the content I'm creating as much as I love creating the content that you guys are watching, would you please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and hit the little bell icon because it'll let you know every time I put out a new video. Don't forget to make somebody smile today and make yourself a better person tomorrow than you were today. Tomorrow, let's make the world spin a little bit happier and a little bit trollier together. Let's sing and dance in the sun and in the rain as one, my brothers and sisters. Live life to the fullest and love every moment of it because you just never know when that last moment's going to come for you. However, never live in fear of that moment. Always live in love and never let your inner child die. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and take care of those around you who cannot take care of themselves, for they are the ones that need it the most. And if no one has told you today that they love you, the Vodkast loves you very much, just the way you are. All right, guys, do no harm. I'm Geycen Oliveira. This is the Vodkast, and I'll catch you guys a little bit further on down the road. Take care, my friends, and happy adventuring.
Don't go to sleep with a catch it in your pocket.